Hey, what's up? Silas here. This is going to be part of my Hands Up, Don't Hit series. And in this series, I talk about different forms of child abuse in the hopes to kind of encourage people to look into peaceful parenting and just spread the message of peaceful parenting. In my experience, I've seen that any culture or any group of people that decides to treat their children better does end up with more positive results at the end. I think most of the differences that you can see in a lot of people and how I think any group of people that you want to come together and say, okay, this group of people is more successful in X, Y, Z than this other group, and invariably you look at how the children are treated, and I think there's a big difference in that. And if you can get to a point where all children, where I think 10% of the world is peacefully parenting, I think you have a magnificent world, and from then I think it just kind of expands. But one thing I want to be specific about this is when I'm talking about this topic, I know it's tough. I don't want people to feel like I'm attacking them personally. Like I can say something in Italian, I can be like, buongiorno, come stai? And I said that in this, I've just said those two words in Italian, hello, how are you? That doesn't mean I'm speaking Italian this whole video. That doesn't make me an Italian speaker just because I can say those words. So this is a situation where if you've hit your children, if you've been hit, I'm not calling the people who hit you just lifetime abusers and that's defining them. I'm not defining you as an abuser because you may have hit children, or you may have hit other people in that kind of situation. This is just discussing the situation and talking about the positives and negatives of it, and hopefully encouraging people to go more towards a peaceful parenting side. So in this one, the first couple of series, I kind of talked about my background in the first one, then I've talked about some different conversations I had with friends. And in this one, I'm just going to be reading an article that I found, and I'll be kind of interspersing this with kind of some thoughts personally and get to the end of it. Okay, here it goes. This is from Science Alert. The title of the article is The Science is In. Spanking Children Does Serious Long-Term Damage. Subheading, Don't Spank Your Children. This is by Tracy Oafifi and Elisa Romano in The Conversation. So spanking, usually defined as hitting a child on the buttocks with an open hand, is a common form of discipline still used on children worldwide. However, to date, spanking has been banned in 53 countries and states globally. The use of spanking has been hotly debated over the last several decades. Supporters state that it's safe, necessary, and effective. Opponents argue that spanking is harmful to children and violates their human rights to protection. As two scholars with extensive research experience and clinical insight in the field of child maltreatment, and with specific expertise relating to spanking, we would like to move beyond this debate. The research clearly shows that spanking is related to an increased likelihood of many poor health, social, and developmental outcomes. These poor outcomes include mental health problems, substance abuse, suicide attempts, and physical health conditions, along with developmental, behavioral, social, and cognitive problems. Equally important, there are no research studies showing that spanking is beneficial for children. Those who say spanking is safe for a child if done in a specific way are, it would seem, simply expressing opinions. And these opinions are not supported by scientific evidence. So some thoughts on the opening of this. As you can see, they are 53 countries and states globally. In the last video that I discussed something that a friend from Jamaica had sent me, where he's talking about the amount of states that had been banned by then. I think he wrote this back in 2012, and I think it was still around the 50s. So it's good to see that this is increasing around the world. And also, this is a very well sourced article, so the links will be in the low bar. You can check it out and go through those links if you need more information. Okay, back to the article. The evidence on spanking. There have now been hundreds of high-quality spanking research studies with a wide variety of samples and study designs. Over time, the quality of this research has improved to include better spanking measures and more sophisticated research designs and statistical methods. The scientific evidence from these studies has consistently shown that spanking is related to harmful outcomes for children. This has been best demonstrated in two landmark meta-analyses led by Elizabeth Gershoff. The first paper, published in 2002, reviewed and analyzed 88 studies published in the 62 years prior and found that physical punishment was associated with physical abuse, delinquency, and antisocial behavior. An updated meta-analysis was most recently published in 2016. This reviewed and analyzed 75 studies from the previous 13 years, concluding that there was no evidence that spanking improved child behavior and that spanking was associated with an increased risk to 13 detrimental outcomes. These include aggression, antisocial behavior, mental health problems, and negative relationships with parents. We now have the data that clearly demonstrates that spanking is not safe nor effective. Of course, this does not make parents who have used spanking bad parents. In the past, we simply did not know the risks. Now, with this part, that's something I definitely do relate to and think I agree with this on a lot of different situations. And this is why I'm creating some of these videos, just wanting to discuss and talk about people. Because I think it's a thing where when you hear about this and somebody says, look, there's another way to help your child besides harming them, people want to be open to this. I know there's some pushback to that where you're thinking, okay, if you were harmed, then you're thinking, if I was harmed, then if there was another way, then why wasn't I given that other way? And there's a lot of things to kind of deal with when you're confronted with this information. But I think it's worth confronting people, worth bringing it out. Okay, confronting goes back to that kind of violent thing, but confrontation itself is not necessarily a negative thing. But I think that's another thing that happens when you have these situations with abuse. If you're raised in a situation where something happens and then you get hit as a kid, you take confrontation in a different way. When confrontation is also going up and challenging yourself and doing something that's tough and doing something that might challenge you and might strain you, and if you're used to being in a situation where if there's something wrong, physical violence occurs in there, you kind of can go to physical violence a lot more, or you expect physical violence against you a lot more, and that might make you a lot more inhibited or get you to that point where you snap and break a lot faster. Okay, I'm kind of rambling a bit there, but let's get back to the article. Towards positive parenting strategies. Evidence from over 20 years of research consistently indicates the harms of spanking. There is also increasing global recognition of the rights of children to protection and dignity, as inscribed in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and in targets within the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, to eliminate violence. Taken together, these tell us that spanking should never be used on children or adolescents of any age. It is important now to find ways to help parents to use positive and non-physical strategies with their children. Research already shows some evidence that parenting programs specifically aimed at preventing physical punishment can be successful. Some evidence for reducing harsh parenting and physical punishment has been found for parent-child interaction therapy, PCIT, the Incredible Years program, IY, and the Nurse-Family Partnership, the NFP. Other promising home visiting initiatives and interventions taking place in community and pediatric settings are also being examined for proven effectiveness. As researchers, we also need to reframe the research that we are conducting, the questions we are asking, and the discussions we're having to move this field forwards and to ensure the safety and well-being of children. The academic journal Child Abuse and Neglect has published a special issue containing original research and discussion papers containing further strategies. It is free to all readers for a limited time. Okay, so this is Tracy Oafifi, Associate Professor at the University of Manitoba, and Elisa Romano, Full Professor of Clinical Psychology at the University of Ottawa. Okay, so that's it for the video. As I said, there's going to be links below to the article. It's very well sourced, so that's a good thing to have. Some people like having the actual data behind it, but as I said, I think this speaks to people in a certain way, where it's like, hey, there's actually good ways to help your children without hitting them. I think that is something intuitive. That's something a lot of people would appreciate. My whole process with this is trying to get these videos out, trying to talk to people. By doing this, it also makes me a lot more comfortable to be able to talk about this with people in person. Maybe I can engage them on the topic, kind of break the ice on it if it comes up, and then I can refer to the videos, I can refer to different sources to do that. So you guys feel free to do that as well. There's going to be links below to the article, also to the merchandise. This drawing that I was doing on the screen, this is kind of a redo of this piece where it's just changing the eyes. And I think it kind of works with this because I'm kind of thinking about with this topic, sometimes it benefits you from looking at things in a different way. I was looking at this one, the first illustration I did, the kid looked more sleepy, and in this one I wanted some more open eyes looks, and I think this was more towards thinking about how children are. They just they're very open and they want to learn things. They want to take in new information. So you trying different ways to communicate with them is an excellent thing, and I think it's a positive thing. It's something that can be done. Just try to find a different way besides just going out to like the hitting the kids, to the violence, or to kind of other possibly abusive, not as positive, not as peaceful kind of parenting and kind of molds, or kind of dealing with your children in general. They learn so much from you. You learn so much from how you treat them, how you deal with them. Like just a simple thing, like just for me trying to explain certain things to my nephew who's almost 3 years old now, something that I take for granted. But then he asks me, I'm like, okay, how do I explain this if I don't know the 50 other things that I relate to this? So that's the same thing. If your child has done something wrong, how do you explain that to the kid without the 50 other things that explain why you think it's wrong? So it's a positive kind of situation. But anyway, so links below to the article, links to the merchandise store, links also to an email. As with the previous video about the Jamaica story, it was a friend of mine that shared that. If you guys have any stories or personal stories or conversations you've had with people about peaceful parenting, about coming out of child abuse kind of situations that you wouldn't mind me reading, I want to try and do these at least once a week. Keep the message out there, keep the voice coming out, and do this with your help. And thanks for listening. Till next video, like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye.